All right, folks, today we're going to be talking about rekeying your standard deadbolt. You don't necessarily have to replace your lock if you don't want the old key to work. You can just have a new key that works that lock. And so we're going to go through the basics of how to rekey this lock. All right, so one of the first things you're going to need in order to rekey the lock is a way to open that lock. Typically, when we say open the lock, we just mean use a key to unlock it. Other times, if you don't have that option, there are other methods you can use, like picking the lock or using a shim going down the back of the lock. For now, though, we'll just go with the disassembly. We're just going to use a screwdriver here, get this screw out. Sometimes Schlage screws are a little tight, so you got to have a little umph in them. But once you get them turning, usually they release pretty well. Once that screw is out, you're going to make sure you set it someplace you can see it. Keep things nice and organized. We're going to pull this cylinder out. Just grab her by the tailpiece and slide it on out real nice and easy. If you notice, on here, there's a little teeny tiny pin. Next tool you're going to need, sometimes you can do this with your screwdriver, but that's only in a pinch. You need some kind of tool that's real sharp and pointy. You can poke down on that pin, and that will push it out of your way so that this top part can spin. Once this top part is spun off and unscrewed, try your best to keep everything together in one little piece so that you don't have to reassemble that later. This pin, you're going to want to remove that, and inside there is a teeny little screw we can see right there. All right, the next thing that you're going to want is just go back to your original key that you had that you're going to be using to open the lock. Insert the key. Give it a little twist, but do not, under any circumstances, pull out this key until you have something that fits in that hole to follow it through. Notice we take it nice and slow. No reason to rush with this. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. We set this aside for now. Inside there, you'll notice that all of those pins are nice and flat. Whenever I tamp them down, you'll notice there's a perfect shear line. It's almost like there's no pins at all, just coming over the edge of that. And that's what we're going for, except we're not wanting to do that with that key. We want that to happen with this key. So we're going to insert that, and you'll notice some of those pins are sinking pretty low. That means that the top pins are going to go into there and bind this keyway. It will not turn because the shear line is improper. Whenever we look, there's also one pin that's a little too high. And so that's the difference in the keys there. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure we have the correct key. This is the key we're rekeying it to. I'm gonna set this here, and we're gonna just dump these pins out. I recommend dumping them out in a place where you can get to them, just in case you need them. We got one pin that's still wedged in there, so if you need to, you can use the key, pop it right out. But always keep them together, just in case for some reason you need those pins again later. A lot of times you're going to want to either lubricate it or clean it at this point. This is a brand new fresh lock, so I don't think that's going to be necessary. This right here is our cylinder. We're going to keep our key in there because it helps us as a guide. And we're going to put our pins in. Pins themselves, not too expensive, but for a standard homeowner, there's no reason to keep these around because you don't rekey but once every few years or whenever you move the house or anything like that. So most folks don't own these. Most folks don't have a reason to own these. They're tiny and they're a little finicky. Just be patient with them and they'll slide right in. Now, if you're an absolute do-it-yourselfer, by all means, you can find pins for sale online. But personally, I recommend just going to a local locksmith, letting them take care of it for you. Because if you mess this process up, then it can be a very, very time-consuming and difficult thing to replace or repair what you've done wrong. Now here's the big test. Whenever we are reinserting our lock into our little chamber there, we do not want to have the first pin fall into that top. So I'm gonna make sure it's at a little bit of a rotation whenever I slide this in. Notice it slides in nice and easy. That means none of my pins are too high. They can still be too low, but if it slides in nice and easy, it means none of them are too high. But the key turns nice and smooth. That means all of my pins are the right depth. All right, so now we're just gonna get back into the reassembly process. You can use your fingers for this, but I like to use tweezers, just makes my life a little easier. I've got big old thumbs. So we're gonna take this spring and put it back into its little tiny hole there. And there's this pin here. It's kind of stuck in between those grooves. Get that in there. Notice there's a little bit of tension on that spring. It's actually a fairly tough spring. Whenever you're operating it, make sure you have it well covered, because if that releases too hard, that little pin will go flying and you have a fun time trying to get that back together. Now, my least favorite part and the hardest part is putting the tailpiece back on. Notice I told you to try to keep it all together. I like to use gravity as my friend to try to get everything aligned properly. And then I pinch it. I keep it held with some tension so that I can smush this spring right back down. There we go. And it's very easy to accidentally thread this the wrong way. So take your time, go slow. And there we go. Now, the pin has caught on our little screen here, or on our little head here. But notice the key is kind of sticky. It doesn't want to come out really easy. That's because this isn't tight enough yet. So we're going to take our pokey tool from before, poke that little head down, and tighten this a little bit. That's probably the right spot. We have a nice, easy key release. The key turns properly. And there you go. We have rekeyed our cylinder.